It's time to break down the Buffalo Bills' Week 9 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Bills need to do to deal with them today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Wednesday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. And as a reminder to you, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Bills is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. Well, folks, if you're looking for analysis from me on the trades for Nyheim Hines and Dean Marlowe and the activation of Trey White, you won't find that here. We did a bonus episode on Tuesday afternoon to cover all of that. So if you missed it, just scroll back one episode in your podcast feed and you can find all of my thoughts on those transactions. Today on this podcast episode, we are going to focus on the Bills' Week 9 opponent. So let's get into it. The Bills, they travel to New Jersey in Week 9 for a road date with the Jets. The game will be played on Sunday, November 6th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The game will be broadcasted on CBS. Ian Eagle is on the play-by-play. Charles Davis is the game analyst. And Evan Washburn is the sideline reporter. This will be the 124th all-time meeting between the Bills and the Jets. The Bills lead the all-time series with a record of 67-56 against the Jets, and the Bills have actually won the last 4 against the Jets. The Bills, as you know, enter this game 6-1. The Jets are doing pretty well this year, 5-3. 5 wins coming against the Browns, Steelers, Dolphins, Packers, and Broncos. The 3 losses came to the Ravens, Bengals, and then last week against the New England Patriots. Jets are off to a good start, and they're 5-3. They haven't won more than 5 games in any season but one time since 2015. One season of 5 or more wins since 2015. They were 7-9 in 2019. The Jets are playing a lot better than they have in recent years, and it really comes down to their defense really coming into its own. So we'll talk about that here on the podcast, but first, let's stay with our normal order of operations here. The head coach of the Jets is Robert Saleh, 43 years old. He's in his second season as the Jets head coach. So far, he is 9-16 in 25 games as their head coach. 4-13 last year, 5-3 so far this year for a 9-16 record in 25 games. He was a 49ers defensive coordinator from 2017 through 2020, and prior to that, he was a defensive assistant in Houston, Seattle, and Jacksonville, dating back to 2005. He's done pretty well with challenges. They've challenged 3 plays so far. Saleh has for his career, and they've won 2 of them, so pretty good so far when it comes to Robert Saleh and challenging plays. Let's talk about their quarterback, Zach Wilson. 6'2", 214 pounds, 23 years old, first-round pick in 2021, the number 2 overall selection. So far, the Jets, with him as a starting quarterback, are 7-11, and he started 5 games so far this year, and the Jets are 4-1 in those starts. Let's talk about his statistical production and his metrics. So far this year, he's completing 54.9% of his passes, 210 passing yards per game, 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a passer rating of 71. So statistically not very impressive. Let's talk about his metrics. And I'm going to spend some time here on this first metric because I think it tells the story about what Zach Wilson is doing so far as a quarterback for the Jets. His average time to throw is 3.19 seconds. That's the second slowest trigger in the NFL. That is a problem. He doesn't run the system like it's designed to run. This is the Kyle Shanahan system, which is predicated on taking advantage of free access with quick throws and yards after catch. And Wilson hasn't proven able to play with any level of consistency within the structure of the offense. And for this Jets team to really become what they want to become, that has to change. And with Zach, it's really always been the question of process in how he's gotten the results. And too much of his success and his good moments are reliant on him doing things that aren't sustainable. You go back to him at BYU, and he made some dazzling plays his final season for the Cougs. But he never really played within the structure of the offense. So he's always been a guy that needed to learn to play with rhythm, timing, and just do the normal things. Everything can't be moving around in the pocket, holding onto the football, surveying the field, and making crazy throws. It happened a lot for him in his last season at BYU, and you fell in love with the idea of if you can get that plus the within structure plays, you have something special. The problem with Zach Wilson, as the within structure stuff has not happened with consistency. This is an offense that is designed to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly, and he's holding onto the football longer than any other quarterback in the NFL that's not named Justin Fields. He's holding this offense back. He has to learn to play within the structure of what's set up for him to do. This is the same offense that you've seen guys like CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins have success in. The problem with Zach Wilson is he's just not running the system. He's not playing within structure with any level of consistency. And I think that average time to throw being 3.19 tells that story, or the story behind that number is what I just said. That has to change for Zach Wilson. Let's get a little bit further into it. 40% of the time, Zach Wilson gets the ball out in under 2.5 seconds, meaning 60% of the time he holds it for over 2.5 seconds. Look at these splits. When Zach gets the ball out in under 2.5 seconds, he's completing 72% of his passes, 7 yards per attempt, and a passer rating of 88.4. When he holds it over 2.5 seconds, and keep in mind he's averaging 3.19 seconds to throw the football, he completes just 41% of his passes, and his passer rating is 56.7. That's the second worst passer rating in the NFL when holding the ball for over 2.5 seconds. And he loses 31% incompletion percentage. So he's holding onto the football. He's doing things that are just not working, and he won't stop. That has to change. He has to play more within structure. Zach Wilson's average depth of target is 8.6 yards from the line of scrimmage. That's 12th in the NFL. 10.6% of his attempts are 20-plus down the field. That's 21st highest in the NFL, so he's not necessarily dialing up the deep ball very often, and when he does, it's not really working. So far on throws that are targeted 20 yards or more down the field, Zach Wilson is 4 of 15, 195 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a passer rating of 39.6. That's the third worst passer rating in the NFL when targeting weapons 20-plus yards down the field, behind Kenny Pickett and Kyler Murray. You heard that correctly. Kyler Murray, the second worst passer rating in the NFL on passes that are targeted 20-plus yards down the field. So I don't know what Zach Wilson's doing here. He's holding onto the football. He's not pushing it down the field very far, and when he does, it's not successful. I'm sure those offensive meetings are pretty entertaining. I'd love to hear what the coaching is, because he's not changing. I'd love to hear what those conversations are like. Play action. 29% of the dropbacks for Zach Wilson are play action. That's 12th in the NFL. His splits are similar with and without play action. 11% of his passes are screens. That's also 12th in the NFL. So play action and screen, that's going to happen a fair amount here. They're, bottom or top half of the league in terms of frequency in both categories. Let's talk about his pressure splits. These are pretty remarkable as well. When Zach Wilson is kept clean, he's doing pretty well, completing 73% of his passes, 9.5 yards per attempt, and a passer rating of 109.4. That's very good. All of that's very good. When he's under pressure, this is awful. And I mean awful. He's completing 19% of his passes, 3 yards per attempt, and a passer rating of 7.1. Dead last in the NFL in completion percentage, under pressure at 19%. The next worst is Mitch Trubisky at 34.4. That's massive, over 15%. That's what type of lead he has for being the worst at completion percentage under pressure. His passer rating under pressure of 7.1, also dead last in the NFL. Mac Jones, second worst at 15.4. So he's more than half as bad. I mean, that's just crazy to me. Those are really poor numbers. When it comes to the blitz splits for Zach Wilson, they're pretty comparable. But the bottom line here is get pressure. And teams are able to get pressure on the Jets. The Jets are facing pressure on 28% of the quarterback dropbacks, fourth highest in the NFL. And those splits are just remarkable. I don't recall really seeing pressure splits that are this poor. And so I think for a lot of quarterbacks, the numbers will tell the story, and they just do with Zach Wilson. And it goes back to what I talked about at the beginning. He's just not playing within structure, and he has to. That's what this system is designed to be. And the off-script stuff is the cherry on top. But the problem, Zach, is the off-script stuff's not working. Very fascinated to see how this evolves here with the Jets. I know that there's some thoughts that this could be a make-or-break start for Zach Wilson and what they've been doing with their quarterbacks and activating Chris Streveler, kind of moving Joe Flacco down the quarterback depth chart, moving Mike White up the depth chart is an ultimatum to Zach Wilson. So we'll see. But this could be a very critical start for Zach Wilson to prove that he can play within structure. So I'm fascinated to see how this evolves on Sunday. All right, here's a sports analogy for you. When it comes to burglars, your home is like the end zone, and you need the absolute strongest defense that you can muster. That's why I use and trust SimpliSafe Home Security. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. It's cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 monitoring by professional agents who always have your back, so you always know that your home is safe. SimpliSafe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alerts you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that are instantly capable of detecting fires, floods, and other threats to your home. You can customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL. You save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Let's talk about this offense a little bit more. The offensive coordinator is Mike LaFleur, who is the brother of Packers head coach Matt LaFleur, who the Bills just played last week. Mike is 35 years old. He's in his second season with the Jets and as an NFL offensive coordinator. He's a Kyle Shanahan disciple. Was with him in 2015 and 2016 with the Falcons as an offensive assistant and then the passing game coordinator for the 49ers 2017 through 2020. So far, this offense is averaging 22 points per game. That's 18th in the NFL. They're converting 33% of their third downs. That's 29th. They are 61% scoring red zone in the touchdowns in the red zone. That's 12th. 338 total yards per game. That's 19th. 108 rushing yards per game. That's 20th. 229 passing yards per game. That is 14th. Let's look at their personnel. At wide receiver, I think they got a pretty nice group here. Some young players that I really like. Their top targeted guy this year is their one of their first round picks, Garrett Wilson, out of Ohio State. Really good route runner. Has been good after the catch. Presents a nice option for them in the passing game, and he's still young. He's been a little bit feast or famine. Some big games mixed with some quiet games, which I think you can expect for a rookie receiver that's playing with an inconsistent quarterback like Zach Wilson, who, obviously he didn't play the first couple of games of the year. But I think Garrett Wilson is going to be a really high-quality receiver in the NFL. They've also got Elijah Moore, who's a second-round pick a couple of years ago. Really nice player. Primarily wins from the slot, a lot of explosiveness and ball skills. Kind of interesting. He requested a trade a few weeks ago. Obviously, they didn't grant that to him. Not sure what the genesis of that is, but he's capable of being a really high-quality player in the NFL. And, if he sticks through with it and, they get their quarterback stuff figured out, I think he could be a great player for the Jets. They also have Braxton Berrios, who kind of broke out for them last year. Player we've talked about, a player a lot of people wanted for the Bills in free agency, but he stayed with the Jets. And I think he's a quality slot receiver, really high-quality slot receiver. And then Corey Davis, he didn't play last week. Obviously a veteran player, experienced, good over the middle, good after the catch. And so, maybe he's not the top 5 pick the Titans drafted him to be a few years ago, but I think he's a starting caliber player in the NFL. And I think he complements what the rest of these guys bring pretty well. So Wilson, Moore, Berrios, Corey Davis, and then I guess their 5th guy is like Denzel Mims, who's been a major disappointment. At running back, it's Michael Carter and James Robinson. Michael Carter was a draft pick last year. A lot of people thought he'd be their featured starter this year, but then they drafted Breece Hall, who was off to a great start, and I mean a great start for them. But he tore his ACL a couple of weeks ago, and he's out for the season. So no Breece Hall for them. Michael Carter's kind of their feature guy, good pass catcher, kind of a shifty, smaller back, but a nice player. And then they traded for James Robinson, who's a bigger back coming over from the Jaguars, can catch the football. He's not super explosive, but I think he's a very nuanced runner. He's a player that I appreciate quite a bit. And I think he actually complements Michael Carter quite well. But obviously the player that Breece Hall was for them early is something that this offense is going to miss moving forward. At tight end, they signed a couple of veteran tight ends in the offseason, one of them being Tyler Conklin, who they've involved pretty heavily. He's the second most targeted player for this offense this year so far. They also paid CJ Uzoma to come over from the Bengals, and he's been their tight end too. He's not been much of a factor in the passing game, but Tyler Conklin has, and he kind of broke out for the Minnesota Vikings over the last few years, and the Jets paid him a pretty good penny to come over and be their starting tight end, and I think he's been a good player for them. So their weapons have really become quite formidable around Zach Wilson here, in my opinion, with these receivers and the running backs and the tight ends. I think it's a solid situation here in terms of the weapons. The offensive line is interesting. They've got some injuries here. Of course, Mekhi Becton, first-round pick from a couple years ago, he's not available. George Fant, a guy who started for them last year and played quite well, he's not available. Elijah Vera Tucker, who was a first-round pick a few years ago that's really kind of come into his own and played a lot of positions for them this year, he's out for the season. So they've had to kind of piece this together a little bit. So their left tackle is Dwayne Brown. He's been a quality starter in the league for a long time, was banged up to start the year, but has come back, and I think he can be a reasonable left tackle for them. Their left guard is Laken Tomlinson, who was with the 49ers for a number of years and played well. He hasn't come over to the Jets and played, I think, to the level that they expected based on the contract they gave him. But I think he's obviously going to continue settling in and be a good starter for them. Their center is Connor McGovern, an experienced player. I think he's average. I think he's an okay center. I don't think he's top tier. I don't think he's a liability. He's fine. Their right guard and their right tackle, this is where they've really got some question marks, with their right guard being Nate Herbig, their right tackle being Cedric Ogbuehi. Those are not preferred starters. Those are backups. Ogbuehi is like their third or fourth right tackle that they've played this year. Nate Herbig is not the preferred starter at right guard. And so those are the two weak links when it comes to this offensive line. So what are my keys for the Bills on offense against this Jets defense? I said that wrong. What are my keys for the Bills defense against this Jets offense? Number one, Light up Zach Wilson. Light him up. We talked about this in that first segment. I mean, Zach Wilson is doing next to nothing when he's under pressure, and he's under pressure a lot. Pass rush has to show up this week in a big way, and you got to take advantage of this right side in a big way because Zach Wilson has about the worst pressure splits I've ever seen. Number two, pressure Zach Wilson some more. I mean, it's critical, right? That he can't function when he's under pressure. And so I know that that's a redundant talking point, but I want to kind of further elaborate a little bit more on, I think interior pressure is really important this week. Pressure in his face. Zach Wilson is a guy that will drift and fade in the pocket, and then he'll eat the football and take a sack, or he'll throw it up. And so you want to get that pressure right in his face. So you're talking about Ed Oliver, Tim Settle, Jordan Phillips. Big game from those guys is needed to really impact the depth of that pocket. Number three, or number two, whatever you want to call it. Seize opportunities to create turnovers. Like I said, there's some belief out there that this is a make or break game for Zach Wilson. And I don't know if that means he's going to settle in and just play within structure, or if he's going to lean more into who he thinks he is as a player. And so seize opportunities to create turnovers. Seize opportunities to create turnovers. So Zach Wilson's going to give you some interceptable passes. Take advantage. Take advantage. And number four is tackle. Make sure nothing is easy for this offense. They've got playmakers. This isn't a joke of a skill group around Zach Wilson. He's got what he needs in terms of weapons to be successful. And they've got some really elusive players in Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore and Braxton Berrios and Michael Carter and Tyler Conklin. Those are all formidable players. And so this is a game where you want to tackle and make sure nothing is easy. Don't give them anything extra. Make them earn anything. If they're going to score on you, they're going to earn it play after play, sustaining drives and finishing in the red zone. See if they can do it. They haven't been a good team on third down this year. Keep it that way. And keep it that way by making sure that you tackle and bring guys down when you have the opportunity to get them down. I hope that you have been getting in on the action over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is my favorite daily fantasy resource. How does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. And PrizePicks has every sport that you possibly can imagine. So it's not just NFL or college, football. It's NBA, MLB, NHL, golf, women's college basketball, soccer, esports, NASCAR, you name it. You can find it over at PrizePicks, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. So download the PrizePicks app or go to the prizepicks.com to sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. So if you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Just don't forget to use our promo code LOCKEDON at sign-up for an instant deposit match worth up to $100. Let's talk about the Jets on defense. And I came away from my study of the New York Jets defense pretty impressed with what they have going on over there. So let's get into it. And look, you'd expect that. Robert Saleh is a defensive-minded head coach. They've invested a ton there recently. Obviously, last year was a historically bad Jets defense. So they really have turned the corner this year. I'm pretty impressed with what they've built on defense. Their defense is coordinated by Jeff Ulbrich, 45 years old. He's in his second season with the Jets. His backstory was kind of with the Falcons, right? 2015 to 2019, the linebackers coach. And then in 2020, when Dan Quinn got fired, he took over as their defensive coordinator, and then he became the Jets defensive coordinator in 2021, and now here he is. Talking about a base 4-3 defense, zone coverage. In some ways pretty similar to the Bills defense structurally. Looking at the success of the defense so far this year, they're allowing 20 points per game. That's 11th in the league. They're allowing 311 yards per game. That is 6th. 108 rushing yards per game. That's 9th. 203 passing yards per game. That's 10th. They're 40% on third down. That's 14th. 59% in red zone defense in terms of limiting touchdowns. That's 19th. Some other metrics I want to bring up here to kind of paint the picture a little bit better about the success of the Jets defense so far this year. Opposing quarterbacks have a passer rating of 76.7 this year against them. That's really good. The Bills, who are really good at that as well, 73.8. The Jets are getting pressure on 26% of passing plays against them. That's third best in the NFL. And they have a 16% blitz rate, which is the 5th lowest in the NFL. So they're getting pressure, and they're doing so without having to blitz. And we know the importance of that. We've talked about that on this podcast. And then their run defense, they're only allowing 3.8 yards per carry. That's second best in the NFL. There's only 2 teams allowing under 4 yards per carry. It's the 49ers, who are number 1, and the Jets. So quarterbacks are not being statistically successful against them. They're getting pressure, they're not blitzing, and they're limiting rushing production quite a bit. They've played well. The Jets deserve your respect on defense. Let's talk about their personnel, and you'll notice as we work through this, a lot more veterans, right? They still got, they got some young players here, but there's a lot more veterans on this team on defense than there's been in the past. At defensive end, Carl Lawson is healthy. He was supposed to be a big-time contributor for them last year. He's healthy. He's back. He's playing well. Opposite of him is John Franklin Myers, who's a sound player. I think he's a good base end in a 4-3 scheme. And then a draft pick, Michael Clemens, who's been a nice third defensive end for them. Jermaine Johnson, one of their 3 first-round picks from last year. I think he's going to be a good player for them, but he's injured. I don't know his status for Sunday. But, Carl Lawson and John Franklin Myers are 2 quality veterans that are going to start for them. On the interior defensive line, Quinnen Williams, he's developed into an elite interior defensive lineman. And so we've talked about this seemingly every week. The Bills have played this murderer's row of defensive tackles. Quinnen Williams is as good as any of them. Special talent. Has absolutely blown up this year and is a big challenge for this Bills offensive line. Next to him is Sheldon Rankins, who's a very dynamic penetration style player, can rush the passer, shoot gaps, get into the backfield, and cause problems. And then Nathan Shepard and Solomon Thomas are the other 2 guys that they'll mix in at defensive tackle when they want to take Williams and Rankins out. Both of those guys are athletic. Solomon Thomas, not necessarily your preferred run stuffer, but, he can shoot gaps and play with quickness, and Nathan Shepard has length and power. This is a good group. There's a good group up front for the Jets. They're pretty deep as well. At linebacker, C.J. Mosley, Quan Alexander, those are their 2 primary players in the second level. Mosley, look, I don't think he's ever lived up to the contract that he got a few years ago. I think he's at times a liability for them, but I think he's playing better than we've seen when you compare him to last year at least. Quan Alexander, a veteran, rangy backer, has had injury problems. He's got a lot of inconsistency, but I think when you consider what the Jets have tried to play next to Mosley in recent years, I think he's been better than those other guys. At corner, Sauce Gardner, high pick, right? A top 5 pick this year out of Cincinnati. A lot of people believe that he's the favorite to be the defensive rookie of the year. He's playing really well. Really well. He's not giving up much. He's making plays in the ball. He's tackling. He's been hyped up and he's delivered. He's been really, really good for them. Now, Stefon Diggs is going to be a really interesting challenge. We'll see how that goes. I'm excited for that matchup. But you cannot deny how good Sauce Gardner has been for this Jets defense. Opposite of him, a free agent signing in DJ Reed, who's been really good. He's been rock solid across from Sauce this year. And then in the slot is a young player in Michael Carter, who's kind of come into his own in that position. I think he's played great as well. I think this young trio of corners is really, really solid. They're playing good football. And it looks like Sauce Gardner is an absolute star in the making. At safety, Jordan Whitehead and LaMarcus Joyner, 2 veterans. This is a spot where they've, tried to roll with Ashton Davis and other young players, but now they've got two vets. Lamarcus Joyner, who was injured last year, has come in and provided some ball skills and some veteran leadership. And then Jordan Whitehead, who was a good player for Tampa Bay, good downhill player with range. He's a nice complementary piece to Joyner. So this defense is really taking shape. I think they've got talent on all three levels, and they've got some young players that are kind of coming up here as well. And you can't say enough good things about how good Quinnen Williams has been, how good Sauce Gardner has been. They're playing good. And for them, that's great. They needed this. They were really poor on defense last year, but they've turned the corner in a big way. So what are my keys for the Bills on offense against this Jets defense? Number one is take care of the football. The Jets are forcing turnovers this year. They've forced a turnover in every game, and 12 so far on the year. The Bills are turning it over too much. 16.4% of drives for the Bills offense this year are turnovers. That's not good enough. That's fourth worst in the NFL. The Bills have to do a much better job of taking care of the football. And you're going up against the Jets defense this week that's taken away the football at a high clip. Again, at least one turnover in every game, 12 so far in 8 games. Take care of the ball. Number two is get the ancillary weapons of the offense going, a.k.a. players not named Stefon Diggs. I want to see Gabe Davis show up and bounce back this week. I want to see Dawson Knox getting going. I want to see McKenzie and/or Shakir get some chances and make a couple plays each. How can you unleash Nyheim Hines this week? I want to see some efficiency to the players in this offense that aren't Stefon Diggs. Now, I still want Diggs to get 12, 13 targets, make the plays that we've come accustomed to seeing from Stefon Diggs, but this is a good defense, and I think the way you can kind of put stress on them is using your full complement of weapons, which I think the Bills have. I think they can do it. So let's get some guys going here that aren't named Stefon Diggs. And number three, this seems like a really basic talking point, but win the line of scrimmage. I think the Jets are good on their defensive line. I've raved about Quinnen Williams. But where I think you have an opportunity against this Jets defense is by being physical up front and creating some displacement and running the football right at them. Getting some gap runs going right at them. Getting some pullers. I think you have a chance to win up front by being more powerful and more physical. I think you can out-physical this defensive line. Again, I'm not trying to disrespect the Jets up front, but I think you have an opportunity here to create some displacement, run the football, and then use that to kind of set up your big plays in the passing game. Because I call it the 49ers defense. This Jets defense is very much designed to limit big plays and be quick and athletic up front. Well, I think the way you can kind of slow down this pass rush is by running right at them and then hitting with some play action and really pushing the ball down the field when they start to kind of play up a little bit. I think you can dictate terms here a little bit. You've got the versatility on offense, schematically and player-wise, and this is the type of game where you want to unleash that. They're 5-3. They're playing pretty well. They've won 4 of their last 5. But I think that, like I said, this is a team that still has a little bit of desperation to me. And the Bills, it's going to be a big one for them, right? Targets on their back, right? Measuring stick. We're 5-3. Here's the Bills. And they're coming to our stadium. I think you can dictate terms here a little bit, and you should try to do that. Not that the Bills don't ever try to do that, but I think you can. I think this can be a sobering game for the Jets if you play it the right way and take care of the football and win up front and tackle and use the depth of your roster to its full advantage against a team that's, I think, doing some really good things, but they don't have the top-end talent or the depth that you do. You need to remind them of that on Sunday. Real quick on the specialists, Greg Zuerlein's their kicker, veteran kicker, 35 years old. He's in his first season with the Jets. Probably remember him for a long time with the Rams. Last 2 seasons with Dallas. 82% so far this year, 84% for his career. Good veteran kicker, but I think he falls short of being labeled automatic. They got a quality young punter in Braden Mann. He's in his third season. I think he's having his best season by far. 43.4 net average per punt, 4.4 yards or 4.4 seconds average hang time. He's coming into his own, and we knew that when he was coming out, he was really talented. And then their kick returner and their punt returner is Braxton Berrios, who's rock solid at both. Takes care of the football, makes good decisions, and gets some yards. I don't think he's super dynamic or explosive or anything like that, but he's everything I would want in a punt returner because of his consistency with making good decisions and taking care of the football, and then giving you some quality production to go with it in terms of average returns. But I don't think he's a hold your breath guy, but he will do the right things with the football. So there you have it, the New York Jets, a team that has had a good start and a team that has not had much success in recent years, but they've got some life. They got a defense. I think this team honestly has just about everything at a pretty good place except for their offensive line, which I think you can attribute to injuries. If they had George Fant and Elijah Vera Tucker, that's a pretty solid offensive line. It really comes down to their quarterback, Zach Wilson, playing winning football. And I know that they're 4-1 with him in the lineup, but I question the sustainability of that based on the way he plays football. And is this going to be the week he wakes up and plays winning football? I'm not sure. I would doubt that based on me being someone who believes that the best indicator of future performance is past performance. And I don't know that the Bills are going to be your get-right game, as a quarterback. But I think there's going to be some urgency this week at home against Buffalo with, like I said, I think he's been put on notice a little bit. So we'll find out. We will find out. All right, folks, there it is. The New York Jets primer. Hopefully you feel ready for this game. We'll get even more ready tomorrow, crossover Thursday. I'll talk to John Butchko, host of Locked On Jets. We'll talk, biggest storylines, matchups, and of course offer our game predictions. So come on back for that. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.